Since I have a couple of you on, can you tell me if you can see my screen?
I'm just on my phone, so I can't.
I can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
And if you guys could mute your lines, that would be lovely because we're getting a lot of feedback.
Okay, I'll call you back in a little bit because I had a question. All right.
Hi, everybody. If you haven't done so already, if you could please introduce yourself in the chat by putting your name, your organization, the position that you hold, and what city you're located in, that would be fabulous.
I'm just calling you on my phone. This is Amy Bradshaw, Mesquite Senior Games, so I don't have a screen.
Well, thanks for letting us know you're here, Amy.
You betcha.
And of course, because I touched it, my countdown stopped. So we'll just skip ahead. I forgot to record. Hi, everybody. Okay, so if you guys haven't, please introduce yourself in the chat so that other people can get to know who you are. And if you don't have yourself on mute already, if you can mute your line just so that we don't have a lot of feedback. Also, I want to apologize because of course, today I decided to give a presentation. I have construction literally right outside my door. It's pretty loud and you can hear it. And then you can also hear my dogs barking at it. So, you know, that's always fun. So just a heads up to everybody. I apologize in advance for crazy noise. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you, everybody, for coming to our little volunteer recognition lunch and learn series. My name is Shannon Moore. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Volunteer Generation Fund Program Officer for Nevada Volunteers. And so essentially, my job is to make sure that we're putting the Volunteer Generation Fund grant funds out into our communities across the state of Nevada to build capacity around volunteer management. And so I am kind of all things volunteerism with Nevada Volunteers. And so this is a part of our grant, the training that we give to our subgrantees. And we have decided to just invite everybody across the state to kind of learn together. So I'm hoping that some of you have come with your best practices and or your problems that you might have with volunteer recognition. We do also have a guest speaker today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you have not muted your line, please do that so that we don't have feedback and we can't hear all the stuff going on in your background. I appreciate that. So one of the things that I keep hearing from volunteer managers repeatedly is that recruitment is super time consuming and costly. They feel that it's really just a huge pain because no matter how much time they spend on recruitment, they don't see a good enough return on the time that they invest. And they are constantly looking for new volunteers. It's very costly utilizing staff time on recruiting, training, and onboarding volunteers only to have them leave. And then also the cost of your marketing, anything that you put in print, advertisements that you might place. And so the solution to that is retention. And so volunteer recognition is a major component of retention. You're not going to keep your volunteers and keep them happy unless they feel recognized and appreciated. Current statistics show us that volunteer retention rate is currently 65%, which means 1 in 3 volunteers will quit within their first year of service. So it is vital for your programs to retain the other 2. And retention comes from volunteers who feel appreciated and fulfilled in their goals. So the first part of this is to please, please, please don't let volunteering be a thankless job. I know sometimes it's hard with busy schedules and such, but it's just super important. The #1 method for retaining volunteers is to make sure that they know they are appreciated. And recognition and appreciation should be coming from different people in different ways. So showing appreciation for volunteers is really a top-down job. And one thing that I want to ask you is, when is the last time that your CEO or your executive director attended an event to thank volunteers, or better yet, show them their appreciation by working side by side with them on a project? This also goes for development directors or other managers that volunteers may not have regular access to. Oh, somebody needs to mute their line. Regular access to, knowing that others in the organization know they exist and appreciate their efforts goes a really long way in making volunteers feel appreciated. Happy volunteers will also share your mission and they'll bring along their friends and family, which builds your networks and potential volunteers, employees, and donors. A lot of volunteers turn into donors and lifelong donors at that. Word of mouth is definitely one of the best ways to recruit volunteers. So those that feel appreciated are going to sing your praises and bring new volunteers in. But something to remember is that at the same time, that disgruntled volunteers are often the loudest and won't hesitate to share their feelings. And they often take other volunteers with them. So keeping your volunteers happy is really important for a lot of different reasons. So the value of your volunteers. So the current value of volunteer hours in Nevada is $25.46. The average volunteer gives 52 hours per year. And your average volunteers are doing approximately, sorry, I gotta mute somebody's line. Okay, I think we're good now. Sorry about that. Okay. So, no, we're not good. We have feedback, guys. Who's not muted? Okay, I think we're good. I need an assistant to run this stuff while I do my presentation, so that I have to stop. Okay, so your average volunteer who does your 52 hours per year is doing approximately $1,394 worth of work for you throughout the year. But what is the value of your outstanding volunteers? So I used to work for the American Cancer Society, and I had several volunteers who would put in a minimum of 50 hours a week. at least. And so they put in more hours than a full-time employee. And what that equals to is approximately $66,196 worth of work for the organization. And so this is important for us to remember when working with volunteers, and thinking that we just don't have the budget for volunteer recognition, because I hear that all the time, that it's not in our budget and we don't have it. But you also don't have the budget to pay employees to do the full-time work that these volunteers are doing. So it's really important, and it should be a line item in your budget. So that's just something to keep in mind, and to help you when you're looking at your return on investment with your volunteers. So when does volunteer recognition begin? Most organizations think that recognition or appreciation is a simple thank you or an award given for a job well done, when in fact it is so much more than that. It's taking the time to build a relationship with your volunteers and respecting them as a person, which includes understanding how they like to be communicated with, what their time constraints are, and what environment they prefer to work. So a lot of people don't think of these things as appreciation, but I can tell you for certain that your volunteers do look at it as a form of appreciation and respect. And so really your volunteer recognition begins with the very first contact that you have with your volunteers. Understanding what volunteers look for in their experience, along with being flexible and offering types of roles that they want, such as some people might want to work in person, but some people might want a virtual role. So if you offer all the ways that people can volunteer, that's a type of recognition. Also, using a volunteer intake form or survey during onboarding to ensure that you understand what motivates each volunteer and how they like to be recognized. And we're going to go into that more, but just remember, some people don't like public displays of adoration, and being pulled up on a stage in front of everybody is can be a very overwhelming experience. And I know it seems crazy that a volunteer would leave for that purpose, but I have had it happen. And so it's really important to keep those things in mind. I love this slide. Before we even think about how we're going to recognize our volunteers, it's important to understand the why in order to have meaningful and engaging recognition. So why do people volunteer? I found these statistics super interesting, that doing good feels good, and therefore it is good for you. So 78% say it lowers their stress levels. 25% say it helps them manage a chronic illness. 94% say it improves their mood. 95% say that it makes their community a better place. And 96% says that it enriches the purpose of their life. So I would say definitely we come across a lot of people who have the time and probably really good knowledge and skills. And these are some good statistics to throw their way if you ever get some opposition about why they can't volunteer. We'll just make them all feel better. So there are a ton of reasons why people volunteer, and some are as unique as a person. But these are the top answers that are given for why people want to volunteer. So to use their skills and experiences, to explore their strengths, to network with or meet people, to build a resume, to support their friends and family members' interests. And a lot of times that's where that personal ask comes in. Making a difference for a cause that's personally affected them, setting a good example for others, the feeling of empowerment, and to fulfill religious obligations or beliefs. So why is important. I thought we'd go over just a couple scenarios so that you really understand why understanding a motivator for a volunteer is super important. So Rhonda volunteers at a food bank. Growing up, she dealt with food insecurities in her home. She often went to school hungry. She didn't get in the lunch line because she knew there would be no money on her account, and she didn't want to get embarrassed by the lunch lady yelling at her and taking away her lunch. She approached the food bank about starting a program to help school-aged children with lunches. She worked tirelessly to put together a new program, ensuring that every dollar was stretched as far as possible to feed as many kids as possible. Rhonda put in over 1,000 hours on the project. At the end of the year, At the recognition party, Rhonda was presented with a beautiful hand-blown glass award and large bouquet of flowers. Although she felt recognized, she was very upset. She quit volunteering with the food bank and later went to work with a different food bank. Why did this happen? So this is why the why is super important. Rhonda's motivation was her childhood experiences, which was food insecurity from a lack of money. Rhonda worked very hard to ensure that each dollar was stretched to feed as many kids as possible. So the organization deciding to honor her by giving her very expensive gifts equals donor dollars not well spent, not spent on the mission at all, and in her view, extravagant and inappropriate. So these are things to keep in mind in getting to know your volunteers and making sure you understand what makes them tick. Otherwise, you lose great volunteers that just gave you 1,000 hours and have started a whole new program for you, which is really sad. David was a senior in college. He was passionate about educating children. He wanted to gain some experience to put on his resume. He decided to volunteer with an after-school tutoring program, despite the fact that his senior classes were quite challenging. He made sure that his volunteer manager knew why he wanted to volunteer. At the end of his time volunteering, he received a certificate of appreciation. David did put his experience on his resume, but left feeling a little frustrated and feeling like his volunteer manager didn't listen to him or understand his needs. Now, we all go through this. David didn't say exactly what he wanted, but it happens. So these are why we have to build these relationships. David's motivation for volunteering was his passion for educating children and experience for a job. David received a certificate of appreciation and experience to put on his resume, but he's still frustrated because a great form of recognition for David would have been a letter of recommendation or even a recommendation on his LinkedIn account. There's a great area to put your experience with working with somebody on LinkedIn and give them all of their accolades so that job recruiters can go look at that and see who's left a comment and about all the great things that you've done. Sarah is an accountant. She's very numbers oriented, and she saw an ad for a skill-based volunteer doing accounting work for 10 hours a week. Sarah thought it was an excellent way to use her knowledge, skills, and abilities to give back to her community. She volunteered for a full year and was invited to a volunteer recognition event. Sarah was excited to meet other volunteers and hear about all the great things that they did and their impact on the community. At the recognition event, volunteers got to mingle and had a nice lunch. Each volunteer was called up to the front and given a certificate of appreciation and thank you card, sorry about my typos, with a handshake. Although Sarah had a great time and felt appreciated, she wasn't sure she wanted to return. So this is a really good personality why. Sarah's volunteered because she's number oriented and found an opportunity that fits her skills. And she wanted to make a difference. So appropriate recognition for Sarah would have been to explain utilizing data and statistics, her impact on the organization and the community, instead of just a thank you and a handshake. So the why is super important because recognition is not one size fits all. In order for recognition to be meaningful, it needs to match the volunteer motivator. Relationship building is imperative in connecting the motivator to the recognition. So these are just some volunteer best practices that hopefully will help you guys in building your recognition programs, but you want to make it a priority. So as I've already stated, there needs to be an actual plan for the year, and you need to have recognition in your budget. Recognizing the work of volunteers is crucial for any organization that wants to retain them and attract others. And you should most definitely have someone designated in your organization who's responsible for ensuring that recognition takes place. So we did a survey before I started my VGF job here with Nevada Volunteers, and it showed that only 10% of the nonprofits that actually filled out the survey had a volunteer manager, someone who is just specifically responsible for dealing with volunteers. And 10% is a really low number. And so when I talk to all of the volunteer managers that are my subgrantees through the grant, they often say, I barely have time to put the events together and get the volunteers out there. And I don't have recognition as a part of my job and no one else is doing it. So this is a problem. And that's why we're doing these trainings. And I hope that some of you guys will share this information with your upper level management so they understand the importance and the necessity of having that one person that makes sure that this happens. You want to do it often. Recognition of volunteers should happen year-round, frequent, informal, and formal. And often it just begins with saying thank you. Doing it in different ways. So you want to vary your recognition from, the, hey, thanks, you did a great job. Little spontaneous treats, which people have a tendency to give out for special holidays. Things like that, and then onto formal events such as dinner and awards. So a little bit of everything works better than nothing. But I would say for those of you who don't have a formal recognition plan in place right now, every little bit of appreciation and thank yous help. So don't give up if you're not there yet. Continue to really sincerely appreciate your volunteers and you'll get there. And that's the next one, be sincere. Make each occasion that you use to recognize your volunteers meaningful. I know when people have a tendency to gush because they have a really great volunteer that they don't want to lose. Sometimes it's overkill. It comes off as very insincere, and people pick up on that. So make sure it is sincere and it's at the right time. Also make sure that you're recognizing the person and not the work. So you can utilize the phrase, you did a great job, as opposed to this is a great job. And it just puts the emphasis on the work that the volunteer has done, that the time that they've put in versus the actual activity that they've worked on. So some more best practices. Make it appropriate to the achievements. We're not handing out huge plaques for 10 hours of work. I get that. But a paper certificate accompanied by a private thank you might be appropriate for, specific events that they have showed up for to help with, or a few months of service. But maybe a public dinner and engraved plaque might be better suited to like 10 years of volunteerism. Just remember to make sure it's something that the volunteer wants and would value. Again, going back to knowing your volunteers and not embarrassing them or causing them super bad anxiety up on a stage. Be consistent and make sure that whatever standards of recognition you establish can be consistently maintained by your organization. Holding a dinner once a year, it sets up expectations for future volunteers. So it gets really frustrating when you have like this big extravagant recognition luncheon or dinner, and volunteers have come in and they've seen that happening, and then, oh, you decide not to have it this year. And so they feel often very slighted and not appreciated as much as the others. They often don't understand that it's a budgeting issue, but that's why you want to have that formal plan in place and make sure that you've budgeted for everything. You also want to be timely and arrange recognition soon after achievement. So I know a lot of you guys have big recognition events that happen once a year, but you'll have people that are doing work that needs to be recognized shortly after that event, and you can't wait a whole year to recognize your volunteers. It is okay to say thank you and maybe give them a card and say, we're going to recognize you at our next recognition event. That's perfectly fine, but you can't not thank them until then, because it diminishes your value of your gratitude, and it also makes people feel like they're never going to be thanked, or what they're doing isn't currently appreciated. And so then they have a tendency to leave. And then also make it unique, which we've talked about several times, getting to know each of your volunteers and their interests, and so that you're making them feel special. So if somebody likes puppies, that's a great example, and you're buying everybody coffee mugs, then maybe you buy somebody a coffee mug with a puppy on it, or you put a picture of their dog on it. Just making things unique to the person really goes a long way. So I really love this slide. This is all about deepening the involvement of your volunteers, and it's appreciation that a lot of people just forget about. A lot of organizations forget that appreciation doesn't just mean saying thank you or giving gifts. It's also respecting your volunteers and treating them like they are an important part of the organization. It's making them feel like they belong, that they have a voice, and that you value their input. It's about trust and empowering them to do more, take on leadership roles, and represent your organization. These forms of appreciation deepen the involvement and enhance the volunteer experience. So providing things such as name tags and business cards, a dedicated workspace or dedicated area for coats and purses. People want their purses and personal data and things like that to be secure while they're helping you. Registration fees for conferences or workshop. Invest in their knowledge and their training. Asking volunteers for input and feedback on programs, policies, goals, etc. I can't emphasize that enough. Your volunteers a lot of times are the ones, they see things from the other side of outside the organization. And so they have really valuable input of things that you're not even thinking about. So it's important to solicit feedback and then take what they say and put it into action. Invite volunteers to staff meetings or board meetings and encourage them to contribute and participate. Involve volunteers in problem-solving efforts. Ask a volunteer to speak on behalf of the program to an outside agency. At the American Cancer Society, when we had a news segment or anything in front of the camera, we put our volunteers out there. I almost never went on, and that's really important to making your volunteers feel empowered and like they really represent the organization. Also, ask a volunteer to coordinate a program, event, or initiative, giving them a little more leadership opportunities. So I have just a few examples. This to me is the fun stuff, and I love punny thank yous and silly things that you can print out and put on them. They even had, I noticed, the thank you for your time. That's a new one that I came across that I love, that already comes for you. You don't have to decorate it, make the little, the thank you or anything. And then, so this was something I sent out to the volunteer coordinators that I had for my last grant cycle. And just wanted to talk about this. So these things were all purchased from the Dollar Tree. The animal crackers were $1 for 8. The seeds were 20 cents a piece. The glue sticks were $1 for 6, and the gum was $1 for 5. So all 4 of these items, it came out to a total of approximately 70 cents per person. So that's 4 really cute recognition items throughout the year for 70 cents, which is amazing. And I would have a hard time believing that people can't come up with 70 cents per person. That's what my grants are for. If you don't have one, apply for one. But I'm just saying, 70 cents. And even if you broke it down and you did one of these for your volunteers, 20 cents for a cute little recognition, something that they can utilize or eat and remember you by. I love this type of stuff. Also, a good way to recognize your volunteers is through spotlights, newsletters, social media, and websites. This is a really good way also for those people who want to set a good example or who love the limelight. And it's also a good way to recognize people who are a little more introverted and don't want to be called up on a stage, but can appreciate that they're being appreciated by the organization in a different way that calls them out, but doesn't really super embarrass them. Group outings are always fun, and this is great for volunteers whose motivators are networking, meeting new people, trying to deal with some loneliness. A lot of times you have retirees or moms that get stuck at home and they want to get out and have fun with other people, and people who just enjoy having fun. They want the volunteer experience to be really fun. Celebrating birthdays and anniversaries is really important too. This shows that you value the person as a person and not just what they do for your organization. I would also add milestones to this. So when somebody has hit their you know, 1,000 hours of volunteerism or something like that, something really big. Those things should be recognized. And so here is where I'm going to say, if you're not keeping track of your volunteer hours, then you really need to start doing that. You cannot calculate your volunteer return on investment. And you also can't keep track of milestones if you're not keeping track of your volunteer hours. That doesn't mean that you personally have to do it, but you can ask them to keep track of it and turn them into you maybe once a month. This helps you in knowing who's doing what and the time it really takes to achieve some of their goals. Sometimes we don't realize how much outside work a volunteer is doing unless we are directly supervising what they're doing. And so that's just something really important to keep in mind. And then we have logoed gear and awards. There is nothing better than a volunteer walking around with your logo in their community, which prompts questions. It leads for people to wonder what they're doing within your organization. Also starts conversations. And as long as they're a great representative of your organization, logo those people up. I know logoed gear can be costly, but you can also sometimes find it that it can be underwritten or sponsors will help you with that. And going into certificates, we have our governor's volunteer recognition certificates. They are free. They need to be ordered 4 weeks in advance. Most organizations use them for Volunteer Appreciation Week, which is April 17th through the 23rd. So if you're wanting to give these to some of your outstanding volunteers, now would be the time to apply for them. They can be presented by a Nevada volunteer commissioner if you would like to invite them to your event. Some people feel that adds a little something special. Just so you know, Nevada Volunteers is a part of the Governor's Commission on Service, and so our commissioners are appointed by the governor. So the certificate is signed by the governor, and then if you would like a commissioner to present, you can do that. Pins, also lapel pins that show that you received that award, are available for purchase for $5 for your volunteers if you'd like to get them a pin. And the information can be found on our website at nevadavolunteers.org under the recognition tab. And I do hope that a lot of you will take advantage of this. There are qualifications for this certificate. So they include an individual that's performed over 200 hours of service in a calendar year, somebody who has provided pro bono service or increased the capacity of the organization by $10,000 or more, an individual who has demonstrated reliability and commitment in continual direct volunteer service for a period of 2 or more years, and an individual who has taken on significant leadership role resulting in a new or enhanced program. So, and then we also have for youth volunteers, it's a youth 18 years or younger that's performed 100 hours of service in a 1-year period. So this is great for school organizations, especially that require so many hours for their organizations or their volunteers. So I would highly recommend that everybody apply for some of these for their volunteers. And I'm sorry, I'll take questions after. And then also we have our Governor's Points of Light Awards, which I'm really excited about. It is our 20th anniversary. And so we have decided to revamp the events, and we came up with a new theme, which is the Stars of Nevada, celebrating 20 years, and hence our beautiful Galaxy Stars of Nevada picture there. And so we're really excited about this. We've also opened up nominations for the full year. We realized that opening nominations in like April or May, sometimes that is the busiest time of year for our volunteer managers or for anybody in an organization. And so we were really limiting how and when people could nominate their volunteers or their own organization or whatever it may be, because there's 9 categories. So we've opened it up to year round, and we will accept nominations through June 15th at 5 p.m. for this year's nominations or this year's event. And then after that, they will go on to the 2023 event. So these are the award categories: individual volunteer, youth volunteer, which is someone under 18, Lifetime Achievement Award, which is 20 years of service or more, but that service has to have taken place in Nevada. So if you have somebody that lives here and they've always volunteered with the same organization, but they just recently moved to Nevada, that doesn't count. It's kind of frustrating, I get, but it has to be 20 years of service in Nevada. A nonprofit organization, the corporate volunteer program. So I know we have lots of businesses throughout the state who have corporate volunteer programs, and they can nominate themselves or someone else can nominate them. The Community Leadership Award is really for, say, groups like a faith-based organization or a family maybe that has really taken on a huge leadership role within the community. And so they can be nominated in that category. National service members are our AmeriCorps members, obviously, and they can be nominated. This year, we added back the military and veterans organization category. And so this is any military or veterans organization that does volunteerism out in the community. We wanted to honor them and give them back their own category. And then what I feel is super important is to recognize our exemplary volunteer managers throughout the state because they make a huge difference. And you are really who makes the volunteers, all of these other categories and stuff. You're the ones who guide them through and make sure they have the best experience possible. And so I think volunteer managers need to be recognized and honored as well. So we added that category back this year. So yep, nominations are open. June 15th is the deadline for 2022. You can submit more than one nomination. But multiple nominations for the same individual, group, or organization will not count. So you can nominate like your organization and a volunteer within your organization and a youth volunteer within your organization, but having all your volunteers fill out a nomination for your organization, it's not going to help. They're not weighted or counted anymore. So that's just kind of a waste of people's time. Now, if you want to have people collaborate to submit one, that's fine. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to my lovely friend, Monica, who is going to talk a little bit about her her recognition that she does. Monica, are you able to come off mute?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name's Monica, and along with my husband, I am the pastor and administrator of the Salvation Army in Great Falls, Montana, where it's a balmy 35 degrees outside today. And we have had the privilege of being here in Great Falls for about 7 years, but prior to that, we were in Pahrump, Nevada for 4 years, and that's where I met Shannon. She talking about volunteers, she wrote me, she was what was she was a Girl Scout lady for our area.
Manager, yeah.
Yeah. And I brought my daughter, she was in kindergarten and wanted to be a Girl Scout. And so I took her to a recruiting event and somehow left there as a Girl Scout leader. And that's, so that's Shannon's gifting, is to get people involved and become volunteers. And through the Salvation Army and Girl Scouts, we were involved with Relay for Life together. We did 4-H together. It's just, I think if you have a heart for people and your community, you're going to find that you're interacting with the same people in many different capacities. So that's, Shannon asked me to come on today and just share a couple ways that I tend to recognize our volunteers. I just, the next slide you have there, Shannon, some of the same information that Shannon has already shared, but hopefully I can kind of maybe have a little different view or idea. So basically, we do want to value our volunteers. One of the biggest things that I find in the Salvation Army is that they save our organization money. And when we're able to save money, then we're able to then focus more of our resources towards our mission. And that's really what we want to be able to do, is help the people that we've been called to help. I have found that many of our people, and Shannon gave a lot of great examples of why people, and I really appreciate it. I was making notes because I'm certainly not an expert on volunteerism. That's just one of the things I do, is helping to recognize our volunteers. But I learned a lot, actually, Shannon, from watching or just listening, but knowing the why. And it's been my experience that while there are many reasons why people volunteer, I think the number one, for my experience anyways, is that people have they have compassion for other people, and they want to help their community. And there really is no underlying reason for a lot of the people that I associate with, other than just wanting to help people. And so when we look at the fact that they could be doing a million other things, they could be volunteering for a number of organizations, we want to make sure that we recognize the gifting of their time to our organization, because they really could be going anywhere else. Many of them don't do it for the accolades, but we all like to feel like we've been seen and appreciated. And so it doesn't have to be extravagant. Again, I love what Shannon said about introverts. I am an introvert, and being signaled out in a meeting or an event, I would rather, go get a root canal, honestly. It's just, for me, not my thing. So knowing that there are ways that we can appreciate and make people feel appreciated without necessarily the big accolades, the big calling them out things, is an important thing to do as well. But the main thing I think that we need to make sure our volunteers are aware of is that we couldn't do what we do without them. And just a couple of examples that, from my experience here and just in Montana, and I could go on and on for things, but here in Great Falls, just this past Christmas, we helped over 400 families with Christmas food and toys. And I say we have volunteers that help with kettles, and we have volunteers that help with a number of different things. But specifically, what I need help with every year is organizing, bagging, and distributing those toys. And it's literally me and my volunteers. And if I didn't have my volunteers, I would be bagging up toys for over 400 families by myself. So I have a wonderful group of women's auxiliary members who are all volunteers that come in, and they spend 3 days. And I've got to tell you, these women are in their 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s, some of them. They work circles around me. They're dedicated. They have a passion. They love it. It's fun for them. It's a great social activity for them to get out and see their friends and do this together. But they do it in 2 or 3 days. It would take me weeks if I had to do it alone. So that's one of the big things, is I fawn over those ladies and tell them how much I love them and I appreciate them, and how literally I would not be able to do it without them. My counterpart in Missoula, Montana, they provide assistance for 10,000 people annually with a staff of 4 people. And when I say staff, they have a staff of 4 paid people, but there's no way those poor people could do service for 10,000 people a year. It's with the help of volunteers that they're able to do that. So we need to make sure that our volunteers know that they are the backbone of our organization. And I often tell my volunteers that they are the army behind the Salvation Army. You know, that they are very much part of who we are. They are part of our family. They are integral to what we do. So you see there on your screen the 12 days of Christmas. And that's something that a friend of mine introduced me to, and I started doing a couple of years ago. We want to keep it simple when we're thinking about appreciation. And what I mean by that is it doesn't always have to be big, extravagant events. It's lovely to be able to put on a big banquet at the end of the year and thank all of our volunteers with a lovely dinner and really kind of make it a big thing. But sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes there's just no money for it. There's not enough, time or whatever it is to do these elaborate things. So it's really to know that you can make people feel appreciated and recognized with small gestures that really sometimes make them feel more appreciated than the big events. One of the things that I like to do, and it does take a little more time on my effort and and kills my hand by the time I'm done with it. But as you all know, the Salvation Army, Christmas is our time. That's where we do, that's where we are out in the community more than any other. We're ringing the bells and we're raising money for toys and collecting toys and distributing and doing meals and all of the things, the food drives and everything that we do. And so at the end of the Christmas season, I really like to recognize and appreciate people with a handwritten note. When I got to this particular assignment, they love to do form letters every year, and it was the same. She has since retired, God bless her. She was adorable, but she would every year at the end of Christmas put a stack of letters on my desk that was a form letter from the same year. She just changed the date on it and wanted me to sign them to send them out to all of our volunteers to thank them. And I was like, no, I'm not going to send a form letter that we've sent year after year after year. That takes no effort, and that there's nothing personal about it. Shannon talked about making things personal, and there's nothing personal. I don't appreciate a form letter. I don't know about the rest of you, but you can tell when it's a form letter that just got spit out of the computer, and especially with an auto pen on it or something like that. I hardly read those. Sometimes I don't even open them because you can just tell, I go to the Dollar Tree and I buy, you can get 8 thank you notes for $1. And then I sit and I handwrite with their name and thanking them individually. And I try to think of something that specific volunteer did throughout the season, or something that maybe they said, an interaction that we had, that I can make it personal so that they know I'm thinking specifically of them. So that's a big one for me, just handwritten notes. And it costs you pennies to buy the note card if you go to the Dollar Tree, and the cost of a stamp. I mean, it's hardly anything. What it's going to cost you is your time. But I find you can do that anytime. You can do that, sitting at home at night, in front of the TV, I usually try to take an afternoon where I just sit down and bang them out, but I take the time to do it by hand. The other thing I had was, and Shannon mentioned, is the use of social media. We can all go on our organization's Facebook page and say thank you to so-and-so for XYZ, and that literally costs nothing. So there's ways to do it. And again, I agree, those people, we all want to feel appreciated. We all want to get that thank you. We don't necessarily, I love what she said about the example of the lady with the crystal base and and how she didn't want you to spend your organization's dollars by recognizing her. So these little things people can appreciate and feel appreciated without, having to break the bank. Thoughtfulness is key. Um, volunteers are givers. Typically, like I said, they do it out of the goodness of their heart. They don't, they don't do it for the recognition, but they do value thoughtfulness because nobody wants to feel unappreciated or taken advantage of. So, make sure we don't want to just recognize them, like during your events or your monthly whatever volunteer recognition thing that you do. Again, saying thank you repeatedly. I loved what Shannon said about working side by side with our volunteers. That's huge. They don't want to feel like, oh, I'm coming to volunteer, but then the people I'm volunteering for are not willing to do the work that I'm doing, if that makes sense. We want them to feel like they're part of our team, and the best way to do that is to get, working with them, and then throughout the, while they're there, making sure to repeatedly reinforce how thankful you are, and how awesome and amazing they are. And you do want it to be sincere. That's something else I noted that Shannon said, you don't want it to be this big hype, like, oh, you want it to be sincere, but you also want to make sure that you're doing it frequently, and that they know that you genuinely are grateful. And then I have here in my notes, when you're keeping it simple, Google and Pinterest are your friends. And this is where you're going to find these, that slide, the previous slide with all
Sorry,
the.
I'm so far
No,
ahead of
you're
you,
fine.
Monica. I apologize.
You are fine. Google and Pinterest are your friends. Here's the thing. I don't have an original creative bone in my body. I cannot come up with a great idea on my own, but I love to glean ideas from other people, from my friends. My counterparts in the Salvation Army, I'm constantly sending little notes saying, okay, what do you do here? How do you do that? What's a good idea? And they tell me all the time, Pinterest, Google, you don't have to. I think sometimes we become overwhelmed with this idea of what am I going to do to make them feel appreciated? What can I do? What kind of gifts can I give? Or what kind of events can I put on? I just don't know. And you don't need to know because we have the gift of the internet, and it is truly a gift. If you're not on Pinterest, get on there, and you can go on Pinterest and put in volunteer appreciation, and you will spend hours and hours and hours and hours searching through ideas of what other people, the creative people, have come up with. So you don't need to be creative. You don't have to know. But so what I like to do is I like to take these ideas that I find on the internet, and then I tweak them and make them so that they work for our situation. So that's where, okay, Shannon, you can go to the next slide with the 12 days of Christmas. What we do here, and I've done it for the last 2 years, and my staff and volunteers love it, is I take the 12 days, the last 12 working days leading up to Christmas of the season. And every day I do these little, I hang up a little bag with their name with a command hook on the wall. And every day I go in and I drop a little, kind of like Santa's helper, I drop these little gifts in there that just let them know that they're appreciated. Some are more elaborate than others. I love, Shannon gave already examples just like these of things that you can pick up at the dollar store that don't have to cost a lot of money. I don't have a picture of one, but this year we did we got microwave popcorn, and then I went on redbox.com and I bought a bunch of codes. You can buy multiple codes at once, and each little tag said, something about dinner and or popcorn and a movie or something like that. And they each got a Redbox code so that they could go and rent a movie and pop their popcorn and little things like that. That again didn't cost a lot of money. When you buy those codes in bulk, you save a little money on those. But I love, and I'm gonna tell you, I love food gifts. I like to receive them and I like to give them. And that's this again, personal preference, but I don't need any more water bottles. I feel like at every event I go to, I get a water bottle. And I gotta admit, my family were big Hydro Flasks. We spend a lot of money on those Hydro Flasks. So when somebody hands me a branded water bottle, I'm like, thank you. You know. So consider, and again, that's goes back to what Shannon was saying about making it personal and considering the person. You know, do they need any more dust collectors on their shelf? Do they need any more junk in there? I am a huge, and if you know your volunteers, then you'll know, they'll tell you. I've been purging and purging and purging. I'm trying to get things out of my house. I'm trying to get the clutter out of my house. So please don't give me a statue, or don't give me another mug, or, you know, something that while I appreciate it, I'm not going to use it, and I'm probably going to give it away. You know, I'm going to donate it. You're going to find it in the nearest thrift store in 6 months. So know your people, and know if they have a tendency to, you know, be a little bit of a hoarder, and they're working really hard to clean out their house. Don't give them more junk. So I love food gifts because everybody likes food, and everybody will appreciate these little, you know, little bag of Goldfish crackers that they can stick in their desk. And when they, you know, suddenly remember they don't have anything for lunch and then they're hungry, they can reach for that little bag of whatever. And then it's got that little, I have an employee, granted, these are employees, but our employees want to be appreciated too. She took all those little tags that I created and she put them all on the bulletin board next to her desk. And long after the snack was gone, or the chapstick was used up, or whatever it was, and not just snacks, chapstick, hand sanitizer, things like that, that people, I call them consumables, you know, things that they can use up and then it can go away, and it's not, again, not another, and this is just personal preference, but not another dust collector, or something that they're not going to use. But she took, so long after all her little consumable gifts and chapsticks and hand sanitizers were all used up, she still kept those little tags on her bulletin board, because she said it just made her feel happy throughout the year, where, you know, and as a reminder of her being appreciated. So go and find those little tags and ideas on the internet, and use them. But I do appreciate what Shannon was saying about making it personal, knowing your client, your volunteers. And on another note, just on a sidebar for that note, when you know them, make sure you know their, you know, if you're doing food, their allergies, their likes and dislikes. You know, I found out this year, somebody told me I gave a big old jar of chocolate, and I found out somebody told me that somebody was, oh, they don't like chocolate, and I was like, I was like, well, maybe they can give it to somebody, but, you know, knowing that kind of stuff. And then the next slide, Shannon, is think about your groups and other organizations that you can recruit. And so this is kind of a 2-in-1, because you're recruiting, you want to make sure, and it goes back to what Shannon, or the swag, and you're giving it out. Not only does it make people feel appreciated, it goes towards helping to gain more volunteers. And this is something that we try really hard to do here. So you can see these little pictures of these trophies. My husband, you know, like I mentioned, the kettles and the bell ringing are huge. It's our #1 fundraiser, and that's where we get the most volunteers, is for those 4 or 5 weeks out of the year when we do bell ringing. So we really rely heavily on volunteers, and we find that the best way for us to get volunteers is to go after groups. And so there's the kettle, that bright yellow kettle with the R on it. That's for the CM Russell High School. We do a high school bell ringing challenge where we get the football teams involved. We get the student government involved. We go after their key clubs and their whatever, the different things that we can do to get groups to get involved. And then we do a challenge where we say, how many hours or how much money you raise or whatever your kind of thing is. And then we do this little trophy here on the block there, and it's a perpetual trophy. So it's a one-time expense for us to buy the trophy, or in this case, we made it. So we just had to buy the things to make it with. And then every year, it's literally the cost of the little plaque that, to have that little plaque engraved. It's like $5 or $10, something like that. And then the group gets the recognition, and they get to take that little trophy and they put it in their trophy case or in their wherever people are going to see it throughout the year. But it's a really nominal fee to do that, and they feel appreciated as a group, but you're not having to spend tons of money doing individual recognitions. You can see we did this, radio station did it. We get the DJs involved, and we say, each DJ goes on the air and challenges their listeners to get involved with their whatever it is. And for us, it's bell ringing, but for you, it can be whatever. If you're looking for people to do a clothing drive or whatever your organization. I'm thinking back to Shannon with the Relay for Life and needing people, trying to get sponsors for that event. So whatever it is, you go to a local radio station and get your DJs involved, and they challenge each other with their listeners. So, and we raise money that way. Another thing is scouting. Little kids in scouting programs, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, love fun patches. And I'll tell you right now, I know that officially Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts aren't supposed to raise money for their organizations. So they're not going to go out there in their uniform, and they're not going to represent necessarily Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. However, you can certainly go to a troop leader and say, hey, listen, if you can organize to get your families, your parents and your kids out there to help us bell ring, then we will give them a little fun patch that they can sew on. And it's not an official thing. So they don't go out there. They're not out there as Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts wearing their uniforms, but they're out there as families. And then you can provide little patches. And so whether it's a food drive or whatever the event is, a bake sale, a car wash, there are companies out there that you can go and find, and they do generic patches, and they'll cost you $1 or so a patch. But then to be able to offer that as appreciation to the kids, and something they can wear on their vest or on their sash or on a blanket, wherever they do it. We are fortunate here in Montana, in Great Falls, that my husband charters a Boy Scout troop. And so we got a permission, and I think he says he's the only one in the nation, I'm not sure, where our Boy Scouts in our council actually can ring the bell for us in their uniform, because we charter a troop, and the money that those kids raise actually goes into scouting. And so we got official approval. And so that's where you see that little Montana Council award patch that is an actual collaboration with the Salvation Army and Boy Scouts. And then, the school government, that big giant trophy there on the right, just lots of different creative ways where you can spend some initial money to do like a trophy, a perpetual trophy, but then that will just year after year, you can do the little plaques, and they hardly cost anything, but those groups get the recognition, and it's a great way to not only recognize those groups, but also it's just a great way to get the word out that, if you go and volunteer at the Salvation Army, they're going to make a big deal about you later with this trophy. And then again, putting it on Facebook, making sure anytime you're mentioning volunteers, whether it's in the media or in your newsletters or wherever it is, that you're making sure to recognize individuals and groups for their help. Making sure that they know, again, going back to that they are part of your organization. For me, there's no better feeling for me than when a volunteer is talking about the organization and they say we, and not, oh, you at the Salvation Army, and all the good that you do, but they want to, they identify as we. They are the Salvation Army. When I say you are the army behind the Salvation Army, that buys them into that ownership of that they are part of us. So when I hear them say we provide, Christmas for kids, or we go out and we provide for disaster victims, or we provide food boxes for people in need, then I know that they feel like they are part of us. And they, I think I had it, I'm going to look for, there's a little note here I had, but, when they love us, they're with us. And so when they feel the love, then they're going to love us back, and then we have them, and then they become those lifetime volunteers where 20 years from now, you're recognizing them at the big fancy dinner because they've done so much, but it's because they love us and they want to give. And it's those little things that we can do throughout the year. Oh, going back to my 12 days of Christmas, I was thinking, okay, so maybe you're not going to do it at Christmas. Maybe you take those 12, do one a month, instead of 12 in a day, because I've got to tell you, it's a little bit of work. And it's like, oh, I forgot to go get the thing for the 12 days today. But you can do those, once a month, and have a little, a way to make sure that they feel appreciated. So that's all I got. But certainly not an expert on volunteers, but that's kind of what we do. And hopefully I was able to offer you some suggestions on things that maybe you hadn't thought about before.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. And I
Sure.
hope that you didn't feel like you would have rather gotten a root canal. than,
No,
than
I could do
today.
presentations. I just don't like being recognized, like, take me up on a stage and talk about how great I am. It's like, no, that's not me. But I don't
Gotcha.
mind presenting. So
Gotcha.
thanks for
Well,
having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to offer to everyone else the opportunity. We are looking for guest speakers to be on one of our, to be on any of our lunch and learn sessions. So if you have something that you're passionate about and want to talk about having to do with volunteer management, please shoot me an email. And so we can get you scheduled to present. I also wanted to let you know I am going to provide resources after this. So the little pieces of paper that have the punny thank yous on them, I have a whole bunch of those already downloaded and in a folder and ready to go, because it is very time consuming to find the free ones sometimes, and also to create those. And I know volunteer managers were already crazy busy, and so I've put those together for you. So I'll send those out after the presentation. So these are our upcoming lunch and learn sessions. In March, we're going to do volunteer onboarding and ongoing training plans. That is something that was specifically requested by my subgrantees. And then in April, we're going to talk about utilizing court-appointed volunteers. We know that there's a lot of if, thens, and buts with using court-appointed volunteers. And hopefully we're going to have some really good speakers that utilize them on a daily basis and talk about how to get around issues there and monitoring and things like that. And then in May, we're going to go over some resources for volunteer managers, and we're going to have a guest speaker from Dovia. For those that aren't familiar with Dovia, it's the Directors of Volunteers and Agencies. And so I put their little blurb down there about what they do, but they're awesome, and they're going to come talk to you about what Dovia is, what it does, and how you can become a member. So those are our upcoming lunch and learns, but I have them scheduled for the whole year. So if you have something you'd like to present, please get a hold of me. These are my sources, and I will send this slide deck out as well. So everything will go in a Google Drive folder, so you'll have access to it in case you'd like to watch it again or share it with some employees that need some information on volunteer recognition. So I do want to thank everybody for being here. I didn't think we were going to go for an hour and 18 minutes before we got to questions and answers. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And then we can, if anybody wants to come off mute and ask questions, talk about best practices, things that they do that they're really proud of, or, hey, I have this problem. How can we do recognition, like help us solve this problem? So the floor is yours. Yes, Mandy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm using headphones because we're in an open office. So I just wanted to share, we're on a very tight budget and we're a volunteer-based organization. So we, without our volunteers, obviously we wouldn't get much done either. So we try to find inexpensive ways as well. So one thing that I found volunteers love that doesn't cost much at all is you just have to be diligent about taking photos throughout the year and events and whatever activities are. So like we have this family, the whole family volunteers with us. I don't know, it's probably blurry.
You can see it.
Okay.
We get the picture.
Yeah. So we, depending on who I'm sending it out to, I might put like on this one, the grandmother then recruited the rest of her family. So I gave each of them this photo in a frame, and but they volunteer like year round. So for a few dollars, they just love the photo. I love it. I have it at my desk, but so photos are just a really inexpensive way that they can remember back to all their efforts. And so just an inexpensive way. Just wanted to share that.
Super personal too. So that's really good.
So, all right.
Anyone else? Nobody has like a burning volunteer recognition problem that they just need everybody to answer.
Okay, I'll ask one.
Okay.
We have a lot of big events that we host, and we end up with groups of volunteers that actually put in hundreds and hundreds of hours over a weekend. And my question was whether or not we could somehow do the Governor Award for a group because it specifically says individual.
That is a great question. I believe that the certificates, do you know the answer to that, Jory? We'll just let her answer. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. No, we ran into this as well. We host a lot of groups. And so the Governor's Award wasn't the best fit for our groups. However, there is a very similar program, the Presidential Award of Service. It is also a Points of Light thing. So you go onto their website and you sign up to be an authorized org. It's a very simple process. There's like an annual little quiz and study session, and that award is geared more towards group volunteers. And we have had, I think, 4 years straight now that we've been tracking hours for groups, and we've had wonderful experiences with it. So similar to the Governor one, but like I said, geared more towards group volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you can also nominate for the Points of Light Award. So the Community Leadership Award is specifically for groups. It's for families or faith-based or groups that volunteer together. So you can nominate for that. That's different than the certificate. So the certificate is really for an individual, but a group can be nominated for the Points of Light Award through Nevada Volunteers. So hopefully that's not too confusing. They're just two different things.
I'll just jump in and say that like the first year, a group is surprised that they even qualify for a bronze, and they get so excited that we've had them come back and now try for the silver and the gold. So it is kind of an engagement tool for us as well to encourage more and more to come and more participation. So I think that could be similar to the Governor one, but it kind of also, when it's an individual, there's different seasons in our lives where we can volunteer more or less. So I do feel like that group effort encourages a long-term volunteer relationship.
Absolutely. Who else has a a burning volunteer recognition problem that they need solved, or a best practice, something they're super proud of that they want to share with the group. But Mandy, go ahead. I
Me
love how you
again.
raise your hand on the screen. They're so cute.
I'm wondering how you all work through awards. So we want to give all of our volunteers an award, but then so they get certificates at the end of large projects. But as far as like at a recognition or / appreciation event for our volunteers, if we were to want to do an award, it's like, you know, we're trying to think of different ways to be creative with the name so that we can give different levels of awards, so that then there's like, hey, why didn't I get one, or why? So we're a little bit nervous of implementing awards across the board unless we can be consistent and have structure to them. So does anybody have advice on, because we love all of our volunteers, so it's difficult to and of course we have a core group and then and some that volunteer here and there. So how do you deal with that?
Who wants to answer Mandy's question? Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. In addition to, you know, some little trinket or whatever, individual recognition, we've also found that having their name and their picture flash up on the screen, whether it's continuous or whether it's during your program, also is a great form of recognition. People like to see their name and their pictures up on the screen. So that's a good form of recognition for large groups like that. Even those candid pictures, you know, pictures that might have, like the ones that you do for the family, even candid pictures, not necessarily just a profile.
Mandy, I think too, part of that is coming up with that formal recognition plan that people forget until it's time to recognize people, right? So if you sit down and you have like a committee meeting, maybe even it involves some of your employees, where you sit down and you set the levels of what recognition happens at X number of hours or X number of years or something like that. You know, then you have it so that you can be consistent, and you also have volunteer input and buy-in when you include them in that decision-making process. So that's a twofold thing that you can do to make sure that you have a formal plan for, like, say, work on it now for next year even. I mean, I know it's only February, but if you get started and then you can tweak it as you go throughout this year, like this is what it would look like next year, but hey, we found that this one's an issue, or we need to we have two people doing the same thing and we're not recognizing them the same way, then you have time to tweak it for 2023 and make sure it's absolutely perfect. And so that would be my recommendation. A formal plan is best. And when you have it in writing, it holds you as volunteer managers accountable as well. You can continually go back and check it, see where your progress is, what you may have forgotten, or put you know, reminders on your calendar. So, okay, this is the day I'm supposed to do this. I used to go in and put volunteer birthdays on my team's calendar because I would not remember them otherwise. I mean, unless they show up on Facebook. But, you know, I just think there's lots of things that you can do to help prepare yourself to have a really solid, consistent year.
Yeah, consistency is a challenge. So we were doing birthday shout outs on Instagram, Facebook, and then it's like, well, it turns out we don't know everyone's birthday. Oh, we were late on this one. So then we did it weekly. And then, so then, you know, so then we're like, okay, maybe we can't do that because we can't be consistent with it. So even though people really enjoyed it and.
Right. But you're right, because if one person gets a birthday wish and someone else doesn't, then they get very upset. But that's where those reminders on your calendar come from, and having that, maybe you assign one person, and maybe it's a volunteer leader. Maybe it's a volunteer in a leadership role, and their whole assignment is to keep track of all the birthdays on a calendar and make sure that those posts come out. So it's not that you can't be consistent with it. I know it's very time consuming, but it's having that one person where it's on their radar to do it. Sam, you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. This is my first attendance. This has been fantastic. Thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you.
My question is I'm new. I'm a VISTA volunteer. I'm working with Nevada Free Taxes Coalition as their resource development officer, and I am new to the nonprofit sector completely. So my question is I've been wondering about volunteer, not only recruitment, this has been great information, but volunteer, what you were just talking about, managing milestones, creating a program for what, how, and when. I was wondering if anybody has already created a template that they follow for that, or just kind of I should sit with my upper management and go through and begin to create one, because I'm pretty sure that they do not have that. And they do suffer immensely from volunteers dropping out, not showing up, not calling, nothing. And so I've already given this some thought and was trying to figure this out. So anybody have any already created templates, Word docs, anything like that? No?
Okay, so if nobody answers, then I realize I need to put a lunch and learn on or an in-person training where we all sit down and come up with a formal recognition plan together. So that way somebody has something, because it's so important. And so, but Sam, if you need extra help, please feel free to get a hold of me after this meeting. I'm more than happy to have a one-on-one with you. That goes for anybody on the call, to talk about a formal recognition plan and putting one in place.
That would be awesome. And absolutely.
Yeah. So just shoot me an email and then we'll get together. And then it looks like, is it Caroline?
Yeah, Caroline.
Okay. You're next.
Okay, my questions are more about like volunteer tracking rather than recognition, but is that okay if I ask those? Okay, so my first question is, we're currently using the national average of 28.54 for like value of work for volunteers. And in the beginning of your presentation, you said that Nevada is 25.46. I guess like how, I'm also relatively new, I've been working here for like 4 months. So I guess I'm just wondering like how important that like $3 difference is for like tracking and stuff like that.
I mean,
like if we should be,
it's really kind of up to you internally, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you want a true representation, I like to use our state's average because that's where we're located. But I mean, it's really tracking for you and for determining your volunteer return on investment. So, it's not like an outside number you're going to report.
Right.
So, I mean, and a lot of people so I did this on another training, and people didn't even realize that there was a state difference. They were just utilizing the national average. They didn't even know Nevada had its own or that any state had its own. So I really don't think that is like a huge sticking point unless internally your organization would like to know that, you know, this pertains specifically to our state.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think the $3 is like a big enough difference to bring up. So, and then I just had another question that's like kind of for everyone. We're like trying to find a better volunteer tracking system than just Excel spreadsheets. And like I've used Salesforce in a previous nonprofit, and I was just wondering like what the general consensus is, what everyone at their organization likes to use for tracking. If anyone has a software that's like really good.
Great question. I know some people have. Okay, Amendra, go ahead.
I love that you can just see me when I'm like, hey.
Yeah. You're like one of my first people on there for some reason.
You know, I feel like this question gets asked quite a bit. I belong to Dovia, which is like the May speaker thing, but like we found that it's a really kind of like an organizational personal decision because many of the volunteer programs also serve as like donor management, and they do more than just one thing. So I think a lot of organizations have invested in programs that are a little bit more custom. So Get Outdoors Nevada, we use a program called Neon CRM. I think City of Henderson and some of the jurisdiction partners use a different system. So I think there's a lot of them out there, and I don't know that there's like one that most use from my experience. It is kind of a who sold you on it, you know, who was the company that called you first kind of thing. But yeah, there's a variety.
Yeah, and I know Mesquite Senior Games just got one created for them, but is anybody from Mesquite Senior Games still on the call? Okay. So if you want to shoot me an email, I can connect you to them too. They're a smaller nonprofit, and actually the majority of their people are like volunteers. And so they really needed software, and they just had it created, and they utilized the VGF grant to purchase that software, and for somebody to come in and then train them to use it. So I would be happy to connect you to people that I know have different software.
Okay, thank you.
If you're looking for something inexpensive, because you know some of those platforms can be quite a bit, so we use a combination of JotForms, since we just subscribe to JotForms, but we use that for a lot of different things. And then JotForms links, or syncs, I should say, to Google Sheets, and so it puts the information from the form automatically into a spreadsheet for you. So if you want to add in manual, you can, if you have other hours to add in. So that's what we've been doing. So it's a very inexpensive way to do tracking that does some of the work for you. So it doesn't do all the work for you, but.
Nice.
And this is Sam, and there is another one that I've been talking to. They're called Eleo, E-L-E-O online. They're very user-friendly and very inexpensive, $39 a month. They are, as the other gal said, they're a donor management software. So the system provides membership management, volunteer management, donor management, all kinds of things. But like all the other ones mentioned here, it is another one that somebody might want to check out. So I've worked within the system. They give you a trial, and if you've not used them before, they'll give you a grant, a 6-month opportunity grant, minimum 6 months. It could be to a year, where the software is free and it's fully functional. So I've worked in the software for another nonprofit. It is not updated, if you will. It looks an awful lot like Excel spreadsheets, but it's functional, it works, and it's very inexpensive. So just a thought.
That's pretty awesome that they give you a grant.
Yeah, they call it an opportunity grant.
That makes sense, because it's a great opportunity.
It does. And they say, depending on your organization, and I don't know how they determine, but the minimum grant's probably 6 months and the maximum is 12.
Awesome.
So that's what I know about that. Because where I'm working right now, we don't have anything. Everything is being done on Excel, and I'm trying to help them level up a bit and make their life a lot easier once they kind of accept to maybe even halfway buy into that. So that's been part of my research.
Awesome.
All right. And again, thank you for all of this, and I'm going to mute up again.
Okay. So I just want to, we only have 4 minutes left, but I did want to say, like, you know, this is a lunch and learn series. So I do encourage you to bring your lunch, sit and eat. As you can tell, for the first so long, like, I'll be presenting, or our guest speakers will be presenting. So please, you know, I didn't put it over your lunch hour to make you go hungry and see how long you can last without eating. So make sure when you come to the next one that you bring your lunch. And also, I want you to know that they will all be housed on Eventbrite for registration. I will send you guys an email. Anyone who registered for this call will get an email for the next one as soon as it's up. and so that you can register for that. And unless there's something else, is there anything else that anyone wants to share in our 3 minutes? Because I'm committed to keeping us on time. Okay, well, if I'm not hearing anything, then I'm going to say thank you very much for everybody for attending, and I hope you got something out of today. You'll be getting some emails from me with some follow-up and access to that Google folder with all of those little thank you things that you can print off for yourselves. Also, there is a Adovia thing in there for volunteer recognition on a budget. And then there's another one of 101 ways to recognize volunteers in there. So lots of things for you guys to utilize. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. So everybody have a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Thank you.